Emma Bradshaw pressed her gloved hand against the train window, watching the barren Nevada landscape roll past in endless waves of sage and dust, while her 5-year-old son Daniel sat beside her, rocking gently and humming a tuneless melody that had no beginning or end. She had traveled nearly 2,000 miles from Philadelphia with nothing but 2 worn carpetbags, a letter of acceptance from a rancher named Caleb Henderson, and a secret that made her stomach twist with equal parts dread and hope. The year was 1883, and she had responded to Caleb's advertisement for a mail-order bride with complete honesty about her widowed status and her son. But she had been deliberately vague about Daniel's condition, terrified that full disclosure would mean rejection before she even had a chance. The train whistle shrieked as they pulled into Belmont, Nevada, a small mining town that had seen better days but still clung to life with the stubborn determination of desert wildflowers. Emma smoothed her dark traveling dress and adjusted Daniel's collar, though he immediately pulled away from her touch, his gray eyes fixed on the window with an intensity that most people found unsettling. He did not speak, had never spoken a word in his 5 years of life, and his body moved in patterns that other children did not understand. Her late husband Robert had called it a curse, a punishment from God, but Emma knew her son was simply different, his mind working in ways that the world was not yet ready to comprehend. "We are almost there, sweetheart," she said softly, though Daniel gave no indication he heard her. She had learned long ago to speak to him anyway, believing that somewhere inside his silent world he understood more than anyone gave him credit for. The platform was crowded with miners, merchants, and families, all bustling about their business with the efficient chaos of a town that never quite slept. Emma stepped down from the train car, holding Daniel's hand firmly as he immediately tried to pull away, drawn by the spinning wheels of a nearby wagon. She scanned the crowd for a man matching Caleb Henderson's description, tall, dark-haired, somewhere in his early 30s, likely wearing ranch clothes and a wide-brimmed hat. Half the men on the platform fit that description. "Mrs. Bradshaw." A deep voice called out, and Emma turned to see a man approaching them with measured steps. He was indeed tall, perhaps 6 feet or more, with sun-bronzed skin and dark brown hair that curled slightly at his collar. His eyes were a striking blue-green, like water over stones, and his face was handsome in a weathered, honest way that spoke of hard work and harder winters. He held his hat in his hands, and Emma noticed the calluses there, the signs of a man who knew the meaning of labor. "Mr. Henderson," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "I am Emma. This is my son, Daniel." Caleb Henderson's gaze dropped to the boy who had stopped trying to escape his mother's grip and was now staring intently at the brass buttons on Caleb's vest. The child's mouth moved silently, and his free hand flapped at his side in a rhythmic pattern. Emma held her breath, waiting for the reaction she had seen so many times before. The uncomfortable shifting, the polite but distant smile, the carefully worded excuse about why this arrangement would not work after all. Instead, Caleb crouched down slowly, bringing himself to Daniel's eye level without moving too close. "Hello, Daniel," he said quietly. "Those are pretty interesting buttons, are they not? They belong to my father. He was in the cavalry." Daniel did not respond, did not even look at Caleb's face, but his humming changed pitch slightly. Emma felt tears prick her eyes at the simple kindness of the gesture, at the fact that Caleb had not recoiled or made her son feel like something to be pitied or feared. Caleb stood again, his expression thoughtful but not troubled. "I have a wagon just over there. The ranch is about an hour outside of town. I hope the journey was not too difficult." "It was long," Emma admitted, but we managed well enough. Mr. Henderson, I must be honest with you about something. In my letters, I mentioned that Daniel was quiet and preferred his own company, but I fear I did not fully explain the extent of his condition. He does not speak, and he does not always respond to people the way other children do. He has certain needs that require patience and understanding. If this changes your mind about our arrangement, I will understand, but I needed you to know the truth before we go any further. Caleb looked at her with those steady, sea-colored eyes, and she saw no judgment there, only consideration. I figured there was more to the story, he said after a moment. Your letters were careful, the way people write when they are protecting something precious. I am not a man who breaks his word, Mrs. Bradshaw. I offered you and your son a home, and that offer stands. I cannot promise I will know what to do all the time, but I can promise I will try. We will learn together. Those 4 words, spoken so simply and sincerely, shattered something in Emma's chest that had been held together by sheer will for too long. We will learn together. Not your problem to solve, not your burden to bear alone. We will learn together. Thank you, she whispered, not trusting herself to say more without weeping openly on the train platform. She had not expected kindness. She had hoped for tolerance, maybe even acceptance in time, but kindness was a gift she had not dared to dream of. The wagon ride to the ranch gave Emma her first real glimpse of Nevada's stark beauty. The land stretched out in all directions, painted in shades of tan and gold and dusty green, with mountains rising in the distance like ancient guardians. The September sun was still hot, but there was a dry quality to the air that was different from Philadelphia's humid summers. Daniel sat between them on the wagon bench, having calmed once the motion began, and Emma noticed how Caleb handled the reins with easy confidence, guiding the horses without harshness. The ranch is not large, Caleb said as they traveled, his voice carrying over the creak of the wagon and the steady rhythm of hoofbeats. About 200 acres with 60 head of cattle and some horses. I run it mostly by myself, with help from a ranch hand named Miguel during busy seasons. The house is simple but solid. 2 bedrooms upstairs, kitchen and sitting room downstairs. There is a well with good water, and the nearest neighbors are the Pritchard family about 3 miles east. They are good people. It sounds lovely, Emma said, meaning it. After months of living in a cramped Philadelphia boarding house, the idea of space and quiet felt like heaven. I want to be clear about expectations, Caleb continued, and Emma appreciated his directness. I am not looking for a servant or a housekeeper I have to marry to keep respectable. I am looking for a partner, someone to build a life with. I know that sort of thing takes time, especially given how we have come together. I do not expect anything from you beyond what you are willing to give, and I will not rush you. Your room will be your own until you decide otherwise. Emma felt a wave of relief so powerful it made her dizzy. She had worried in the dark hours of the journey what kind of man Caleb Henderson might truly be, what demands he might make. That is very kind of you. I should tell you about myself as well, so there are no surprises. I was married to Robert Bradshaw for 6 years. He was a clerk in a shipping office. He died of pneumonia last winter, leaving us with debts I could not pay on my own. I worked as a seamstress, but it was not enough to keep us housed and fed in the city. I have no family left. My parents passed when I was young, and I was raised by an aunt who has since died as well. Daniel is all I have, and I will do whatever I must to give him a good life. He will have one here, Caleb said firmly. I promise you that. They rode in companionable silence for a while, and Emma found herself studying Caleb's profile when she thought he was not looking. He had a strong jaw, a straight nose that had been broken at least once, and a mouth that looked like it was more accustomed to smiling than frowning, despite the serious set of it now. There were lines at the corners of his eyes, the kind that came from squinting into the sun, and a small scar above his left eyebrow. He was handsome, she thought, but more than that, he seemed solid, dependable, like a man who said what he meant and meant what he said. The Henderson ranch appeared on the horizon as the sun began its descent toward the western mountains. The house was exactly as Caleb had described, a simple two-story structure of wood and stone, with a wide porch and a sturdy roof. There was a barn, a corral with several horses and various outbuildings that spoke of a working ranch. It was not grand, but it looked well-maintained and welcoming, and Emma felt something in her chest loosen at the sight of it. "Home," Caleb said simply, and there was pride in his voice. He helped Emma down from the wagon, and she in turn helped Daniel, who immediately began walking in circles around the wagon wheel, counting under his breath in a way that was not quite counting, more like a rhythmic breathing that happened to include numbers. Emma started to redirect him, worried about making a good first impression, but Caleb shook his head slightly. "Let him get accustomed," he said. "This is his home now, too. He should explore it however he needs to." Emma watched her son circle the wheel 7 times exactly, then stop and stare at the mountains in the distance with complete absorption. "You are very understanding," she said quietly. "Most people find his behavior disturbing or think he is being willfully disobedient." Caleb picked up her bags from the wagon and started toward the house. "I had a cousin, back in Missouri before I came west. Sarah was her name. She was not like Daniel exactly, but she did not speak either, and she had fits sometimes where she would cry and rock and nobody could comfort her. My aunt and uncle tried everything, took her to doctor after doctor. Most of them said she was possessed or simple-minded or that my aunt had done something wrong while carrying her. But Sarah was not any of those things. She was just Sarah, and she understood more than she could tell us. She died of scarlet fever when she was 8, and I still miss her. So no, I do not find your son disturbing. I find him interesting, and I would like to understand his world better." Emma followed Caleb into the house, blinking as her eyes adjusted to the dimmer interior. The front door opened directly into a sitting room with a stone fireplace, simple furniture, and windows that let in the golden afternoon light. To the right was a kitchen with a wood stove, a sturdy table, and shelves lined with dishes and supplies. Everything was clean and organized, if decidedly masculine in its simplicity. "The stairs are over here," Caleb said, leading her up a narrow staircase to the second floor. There were 3 doors along a short hallway. "This is my room," he said, gesturing to the first. "That is the spare room, which I thought you might want for Daniel since it is smaller and might feel cozier. And this one is for you." He opened the door to reveal a room of modest size with a large bed covered in a simple quilt, a dresser, a washstand, and a window that overlooked the front of the property. It was plain but comfortable, and most importantly, it was clean and private. "This is wonderful, thank you," Emma said, setting her smaller bag on the bed. "We have imposed on your hospitality already, but would it be possible to show Daniel his room as well? He does better with transitions when he can see where things are and understand the layout." "Of course," Caleb said, and led them to the smaller room next door. It was perhaps half the size of Emma's, with a narrow bed, a small dresser, and a window that faced the barn and mountains beyond. Daniel had followed them upstairs silently, and now he entered the room and immediately went to the window, pressing his face against the glass. "Mountains," Emma said softly, going to stand beside him. "See the mountains, Daniel. They are very big and very old. The sun will set behind them soon, and it will be beautiful." Daniel's hand came up and traced the outline of the mountains on the glass, his humming starting again. Emma glanced at Caleb, expecting to see impatience or confusion, but instead, she saw him watching Daniel with genuine curiosity. "Does he like to draw?" Caleb asked. "I do not know," Emma admitted. "We never had much in the way of paper or pencils. Everything went to necessities. I have some paper in the sitting room, ledgers I use for ranch records. I could spare some pages and find a pencil. If he likes to trace things, he might like to draw them too." "That is very thoughtful," Emma said, touched once again by this man's unexpected gentleness. They went back downstairs, and Caleb rummaged through a desk in the corner of the sitting room, producing several sheets of blank paper and 2 pencils. Daniel had followed them down and was now investigating the fireplace, running his fingers along the stones in a systematic pattern. "Daniel," Emma called softly, "would you like to try something?" She sat at the table and laid out the paper, and to her surprise, Daniel came over immediately, drawn by the newness of the offering. She put a pencil in his hand and guided it to the paper, then let go. For a moment, Daniel just held the pencil, staring at the blank page. Then, slowly, he began to draw. The lines were shaky at first, but they clearly formed the outline of mountains. Not realistic mountains, but the essence of them, the shapes that his mind had captured from the window. Emma felt tears sting her eyes again as she watched her silent son communicate the only way he could, through the movement of his hand and the patterns he created. Caleb stood behind them, watching over Emma's shoulder. "He sees things," he said quietly. "Really sees them, in a way most people do not take the time to do." "Yes," Emma whispered. "That is exactly it. He sees things." That first evening at the Henderson ranch was the most peaceful Emma had experienced in longer than she could remember. Caleb made a simple dinner of bacon, beans, and biscuits, apologizing for his limited cooking skills, though Emma thought it was delicious after weeks of trained food and boarding house stew. Daniel ate mechanically the way he always did, but he finished his plate and did not fuss, which Emma counted as a success. After dinner, Caleb showed Emma the layout of the ranch while Daniel drew more pictures at the table, content in his new activity. The barn housed 4 horses, a milk cow, and several chickens. The well was deep and cold, producing water that tasted clean and fresh. The root cellar was well stocked with preserves, vegetables, and smoked meat, evidence of a man who planned ahead and took care of his resources. "I do most of the big work in the mornings," Caleb explained as they walked back toward the house in the fading light. "Feeding animals, checking fences, any repairs that need doing. Afternoons are for specific tasks depending on the season. Right now I am preparing for winter, making sure we have enough hay and firewood, checking the cattle for any signs of illness or injury. I will need to make a run into town in a few days for supplies. You are welcome to come along, get familiar with Belmont and meet some of the townsfolk." "I would like that," Emma said. "I will need to find work eventually to contribute to the household. I am a skilled seamstress and could take in mending or make clothes for people. I also know how to manage a household budget and keep accounts, if that would be helpful." Caleb stopped walking and turned to face her, his expression serious in the dusk light. "Emma, you do not need to rush into working yourself to exhaustion. I asked you to come here because I wanted a wife, a partner, not a boarder who has to pay her way. We will share this life, which means we share the work and the rewards. I am not a rich man, but I am comfortable enough to support you and Daniel. In time, if you want to sow for pleasure or profit, that is your choice. But do not feel you must earn your place here. You already have it." Emma had been independent by necessity for so long that the idea of being supported, of being cared for, felt almost alien. But she could see the sincerity in Caleb's face, and she nodded slowly. "Thank you. That means more than you know. They returned to the house to find Daniel standing at the sitting room window, watching the last light fade from the sky. His drawings were scattered across the table, a dozen interpretations of the same mountains, each slightly different. Emma gathered them carefully, treating them like the treasures they were. Putting Daniel to bed in a new place was always challenging, and that night was no exception. He did not like the unfamiliar room, the different sounds, the way the moonlight came through the window at a new angle. He rocked on the bed and hummed louder, his distress building. Emma sat with him, rubbing his back in slow circles and singing the lullaby that sometimes helped, but Daniel was working himself toward one of his episodes where nothing could reach him. A soft knock came at the door and Caleb's voice said, "May I come in?" "Yes," Emma said, exhausted and worried. Caleb entered carrying a lamp and he sat down on the floor a few feet from the bed, giving Daniel space. "I understand this is all very new," he said, his voice calm and low. "New house, new room, new sounds. That would make anyone uncomfortable. But you are safe here, Daniel. Your mother is here and I am here and nothing is going to hurt you. This is your room now, which means you get to decide how it feels. Tomorrow, we can move the bed to a different wall if you want, or cover the window if the moonlight is too bright. We will figure out what makes it right for you." To Emma's surprise, Daniel's humming quieted slightly and his rocking slowed. Caleb kept talking, his voice a steady rumble in the quiet room, telling Daniel about the ranch, about the horses in the barn and the chickens who pecked for bugs, and the mountains that turned purple in the dawn light. He did not seem to expect any response, just offered his words like a gift, and slowly, so slowly, Daniel relaxed. When the boy finally lay down and closed his eyes, Emma covered him with a blanket and followed Caleb out into the hallway, pulling the door mostly closed behind her. "How did you do that?" she whispered, astonished. Caleb shrugged, looking almost embarrassed. "I do not know if I did anything. Maybe he was ready to settle and just needed time, or maybe he heard that I meant it about figuring things out together. Animals know when you are being honest with them. Maybe children do too, especially children like Daniel who experience the world differently." Emma found herself looking at this unexpected man, this rancher who had invited strangers into his home and treated them with a kindness she had not dared hope for, and felt something warm unfold in her chest. It was too soon to call it love, too soon even to call it affection, but it was the beginning of something, a seed of possibility planted in fertile ground. "Thank you, Caleb," she said, using his given name for the first time, "for everything, for being patient with him, with both of us." "Emma," he said, and her name sounded good in his low voice, "you do not need to thank me for being a decent human being. This is what family does. They show up for each other. Family." The word hung in the air between them, full of promise and hope. The first week at the Henderson ranch established a rhythm that felt surprisingly natural. Emma woke with the sun, finding Caleb already up and tending to the animals. She would make breakfast, simple fare but hearty, and Daniel would eat while staring out the window at the mountains that had become his fixation. Caleb never minded Daniel's silence or his strange habits. Instead, he accommodated them, giving the boy space when he needed it and gentle structure when that seemed more appropriate. Emma began to truly learn the man she had agreed to marry. Caleb Henderson was 32 years old, originally from Missouri but driven west by wanderlust and the promise of land. He had worked as a ranch hand for years before saving enough to buy his own place. He was educated, having attended school through 8th grade, and he read voraciously, his small bookshelf containing everything from agricultural manuals to novels by Dickens and Hawthorne. He had a dry sense of humor that emerged at unexpected moments, making Emma laugh in a way she had not laughed in years. He was also patient in a way that seemed almost supernatural. When Daniel had a difficult morning, refusing to eat or dress, working himself into a state of agitation, Caleb would simply say, "Let him be. He will come around when he is ready." And Daniel always did, eventually responding to Caleb's calm presence in a way he rarely had with others. One afternoon, about 10 days after Emma and Daniel's arrival, Caleb invited Daniel to come out to the barn with him. Emma watched nervously from the kitchen window as Caleb led her son across the yard, talking to him in that steady way he had, not expecting responses but offering information and kindness. In the barn, Caleb showed Daniel the horses, introducing each one by name. There was Buck, the big bay gelding Caleb rode for ranch work; Star, the mare with the white blaze on her forehead; Daisy, the old girl who had been with Caleb since he first started ranching; and Thunder, the young stallion still being trained. Daniel stood very still as Caleb brought Star forward, letting the mare sniff at the boy's hand. "Horses are good judges of character," Caleb said. "If Star likes you, that means you are good people." Star nuzzled Daniel's palm, and for the first time since they arrived in Nevada, Emma saw her son smile. It was small and brief, but it was real, and it made Emma's heart squeeze painfully in her chest. Over the following weeks, Daniel became Caleb's shadow whenever the rancher was near the house. He would stand at the corral fence, watching Caleb work with the horses, his hands flapping in that way they did when he was excited or interested. Caleb gave him small tasks, holding a rope, carrying a brush, fetching a tool from the barn. Daniel did not always understand what was being asked, but he tried, and Caleb praised the effort as much as the result. "He is smart," Caleb told Emma one evening as they sat on the porch after Daniel had gone to bed. "He sees patterns I miss, understands things in ways I never would." This morning, I was trying to figure out why the gate on the north pasture kept coming unlatched, and Daniel just walked up and showed me how the wind hits it at a certain angle and lifts the latch. He did not say a word, but he understood the problem and the solution. Emma wrapped her shawl tighter against the cool October evening. "Most people think he is simple-minded or damaged. His father certainly did. Robert was ashamed of him, wanted to send him away to an institution. We fought about it constantly." "I am sorry you had to fight that battle," Caleb said quietly, "but I am glad you won. Daniel belongs with someone who loves him, not locked away because he does not fit someone else's idea of normal. You really see him as a person, do not you? Not as a problem or a burden." "Of course I do. He is a person. A unique one, sure, but we are all unique in our own ways." Caleb was quiet for a moment, then added, "Can I ask you something that might be too personal?" "You can ask," Emma said, curious. "When you responded to my advertisement, did you think I would reject you once I learned the full truth about Daniel?" Emma considered lying, softening the truth, but Caleb had been nothing but honest with her. "Yes," she admitted. "I thought you would send us back on the next train. I thought it best you might let us stay temporarily out of pity. I never imagined you would welcome us the way you have. Then I am glad I could surprise you." Caleb looked out at the dark landscape, the stars brilliant in the clear sky. "I should be honest, too. I was lonely, Emma. This ranch, it is a good life, but it is a solitary one. I wanted someone to share it with, to build something with. I do not care that Daniel does not talk or that he needs extra patience. He is your son, which makes him important to me. And beyond that, he is becoming important to me for his own sake." Emma felt warmth spread through her chest despite the cold air. "He has grown attached to you, I can tell. He is calmer here than he has been anywhere else, even in our old home with Robert. You have a gift with him." "Maybe," Caleb said. "Or maybe it is just that I do not expect him to be anything other than who he is. There is freedom in that, I think. Freedom to just exist without constantly being judged or corrected." They sat in comfortable silence, and Emma found herself acutely aware of Caleb's presence beside her. The warmth of him, the solid strength, the quiet competence that marked everything he did. Her marriage to Robert had been born of necessity and social expectation. She had been 18 and alone, and he had seemed kind enough at the time. But there had never been this ease between them, this sense of partnership that was developing with Caleb. The trip to Belmont came on a Saturday morning when the weather was clear and cool. Emma wore her best dress, dark blue with modest trim, and had carefully braided her brown hair and pinned it up. Daniel wore clean clothes and his good shoes, though he had already managed to get dust on his knees from kneeling in the yard to examine a trail of ants. The wagon ride was pleasant, and Emma found herself relaxing into the journey, pointing out things to Daniel and chatting with Caleb about the supplies they needed. Belmont on a Saturday was bustling with activity. Miners coming down from the hills to spend their wages, ranchers and farmers stocking up on necessities, families enjoying a day in town. Caleb helped Emma down from the wagon on Main Street, and several people called out greetings to him. He was clearly well liked in the community, respected for his hard work and honest dealings. He introduced Emma to the Pritchards, the neighboring family he had mentioned, and to Mr. and Mrs. Chen, who ran the general store. "This is Emma, my wife," Caleb said with quiet pride, and Emma felt a flutter in her stomach at hearing herself claimed so definitively. They had not yet had any formal ceremony, though Caleb had mentioned they could visit the circuit judge when he came through next month to make things legal and proper. Mrs. Chen, a petite woman with sharp eyes and a warm smile, greeted Emma enthusiastically. "We are so glad Caleb has found someone. He has been alone too long, and this must be your son." "Yes, this is Daniel," Emma said, watching as her son stared intently at the jars of candy on the store counter, his humming barely audible. "He is a quiet one, yes," Mrs. Chen observed. "My nephew is also very quiet. Some children are thinkers, not talkers." Emma appreciated the simple acceptance, the lack of probing questions or uncomfortable stares. While Caleb handled the supply orders, Emma browsed the store with Daniel, letting him look at things that caught his interest. He was fascinated by a display of colored glass bottles, touching each one gently and watching how the light refracted through them. "Would you like one?" Emma asked softly, even though she knew he would not answer. But his hand lingered on a blue bottle, and she took that as assent. She purchased it with a few coins from the small amount of money she had left from Philadelphia, wanting to give her son something that brought him joy. Outside, they encountered a well-dressed woman in her 40s who stopped Caleb with a tight smile. "Mr. Henderson, I heard you had brought a wife out from the East. How progressive of you." There was something sharp in her tone that immediately put Emma on edge. Caleb's posture stiffened slightly. "Mrs. Whitmore, this is Emma Bradshaw. Emma, this is Mrs. Whitmore. She runs the boarding house." "Bradshaw," Mrs. Whitmore's eyebrows rose. "Not Henderson yet. How modern. And this is your son, I presume? He seems rather odd." Emma felt her protective instincts flare, but before she could respond, Caleb stepped closer to her side, his voice cordial but cool. "Daniel is a fine boy, and we are fortunate to have him. Now, if you will excuse us, we have errands to complete." He guided Emma and Daniel away, and once they were out of earshot, Emma let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. "Thank you for that. I am accustomed to people being unkind about Daniel, but it never gets easier. Mrs. Whitmore is a bitter woman who finds fault with everyone," Caleb said firmly. Pay her no mind. Most folks in Belmont are decent people who will accept Daniel once they get to know him. The rest of the day in town was pleasant, and Emma began to see the community she might be joining. She met the school teacher, Miss Sarah Brennan, a young woman in her 20s who was enthusiastic about her students and curious about Emma's background. When Emma mentioned her sewing skills, Sarah immediately asked if she might be able to repair some damaged textbooks and make covers for them. I could never pay what you deserve, Sarah said apologetically, but I could offer trade, perhaps some books for Daniel if he likes to look at pictures. He would love that, Emma said, touched by the thoughtfulness. By the time they loaded up the wagon and headed back to the ranch, Emma felt like she had taken a real step toward making Nevada her home. Daniel sat between them with his blue bottle clutched in his hands, turning it to catch the afternoon sun, and Emma found herself leaning slightly toward Caleb, drawn by his warmth and his quiet strength. That night, after Daniel was asleep, Emma worked up the courage to speak to Caleb about something that had been on her mind. They were in the kitchen, Emma washing dishes while Caleb dried, and the domestic simplicity of it made her brave. Caleb, I have been thinking about our arrangement. You have been more than generous, more than patient, but we have been living as if we are truly married when we have not made any legal commitments. I know you mentioned the circuit judge, but I want to be clear about my intentions. If you still want me as your wife, truly as your wife in all ways, then I am willing. You have shown me more kindness and respect than I ever knew to hope for, and Daniel has thrived here in ways I never imagined possible. I would be honored to be Mrs. Henderson, if the offer still stands. Caleb set down the dish he was drying and turned to face her fully. Emma, the offer never wavered. I have been trying to give you time, not wanting to rush you or make you feel obligated. But if you are saying what I think you are saying, then yes, I want you as my wife. I want to build a life with you and Daniel, to be a family in truth. Then when the judge comes, we will make it official, Emma said, her heart racing. Caleb reached out and took her hand, his calloused fingers gentle around hers. I will do my best to make you happy, Emma. I promise you that. You already do, she whispered, and then, gathering her courage, she leaned up and pressed a soft kiss to his cheek. Caleb's eyes widened in surprise, then softened with warmth, and he squeezed her hand gently before releasing it. It was a small moment, a simple gesture, but it felt monumental, like they had crossed some invisible threshold into new territory. The weeks that followed were some of the happiest of Emma's life. As October gave way to November, the weather turned colder, and Caleb worked long days preparing the ranch for winter. Emma threw herself into homemaking, preserving the last of the autumn vegetables, sewing curtains for the windows, and making the house feel more like theirs rather than just Caleb's. Daniel continued to flourish in ways that amazed her. He spent hours in the barn with Caleb, developing a particular bond with Star, the gentle mare. Caleb showed Daniel how to brush the horse, and though Daniel's technique was unorthodox, Star seemed to enjoy the attention. The boy began drawing pictures of horses with his pencils, filling page after page with his unique perspective on the animals that had captured his fascination. One morning, Emma was kneading bread dough when she heard Daniel make a sound she had never heard before. Not humming, not his wordless vocalizations, but something closer to speech. She froze, flour dusting her hands, and listened. It came again from Daniel's room upstairs. Star. Emma's heart hammered as she climbed the stairs, afraid to hope. She found Daniel at his window, looking toward the barn, and he said it again, clear as day. Star. Tears streamed down Emma's face as she knelt beside her son. Yes, sweetheart, that is Star. You said her name, you spoke. Daniel did not react to her excitement, just continued staring out the window. But Emma did not care. Her son had spoken his first word at 5 years old, and it was the name of a horse on a Nevada ranch that had become their sanctuary. When Caleb came in for lunch, Emma told him immediately, barely able to contain her joy. Caleb's face lit up with genuine pride. "That is wonderful. Did you hear that, Daniel? You said Star's name. She will be so pleased." That afternoon, Caleb took Daniel out to the barn, and in front of Star's stall, Daniel said the name again. Caleb praised him warmly, and though Daniel showed no outward emotion, Emma could tell he understood he had done something good. It was the first word, but not the last. Over the following weeks, Daniel began to add to his vocabulary, slowly and in his own way. He said, "Mama," one evening at dinner, and Emma wept into her napkin while Caleb reached across the table to squeeze her hand. He said Caleb not long after, though it came out more like Cabe, and Caleb looked as moved as Emma felt. The words were simple, mostly nouns for things he wanted or people he cared about, and they did not come in sentences or conversations. But they came, and that was a miracle Emma had stopped believing possible. The circuit judge, a gruff but fair man named Judge Harmon, arrived in Belmont on a cold morning in late November. Caleb and Emma dressed in their best clothes, and even Daniel wore a proper suit that Emma had sewn for him from fabric purchased in town. They rode into Belmont with the Pritchards as witnesses, and in the small courthouse that also served as town hall, Emma Bradshaw became Emma Henderson in a ceremony that took less than 10 minutes, but meant everything. Caleb had bought a simple gold band from Mr. Chen, and when he slipped it onto Emma's finger, his eyes were warm with promise. Emma had found a band for him as well, using money from the mending work she had been doing for townspeople, and when she put it on his hand, she felt the rightness of it settle into her bones. Judge Harmon pronounced them husband and wife, and Caleb kissed her for the first time, a gentle press of lips that made Emma's heart soar. They celebrated with dinner at the boarding house restaurant, Mrs. Whitmore's tight-lipped disapproval notwithstanding, and Daniel ate his meal quietly while Emma and Caleb received congratulations from the other diners. It was not a grand wedding by any measure, but it was real and true, and Emma had never been happier. That night back at the ranch, after Daniel was settled in bed, Emma stood in the doorway of her room, her heart pounding. This was her wedding night, and she had told Caleb she was willing, but nerves still fluttered in her stomach. Her marriage to Robert had been dutiful but not particularly passionate, and she did not know what to expect from Caleb. A soft knock came at her door, and Caleb's voice said, "Emma, may I come in?" "Yes," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Caleb entered, still wearing his wedding clothes, and he closed the door behind him. In the lamplight, he looked nervous too, which somehow made Emma feel better. "I want you to know that just because we are married now does not mean anything has to change tonight. We can take this at whatever pace feels right to you." Emma crossed the room and took his hands. "Caleb, you have been patient and kind beyond measure. I am your wife now, and I want to be your wife in all ways. I am nervous, but I trust you. I trust you more than I have trusted anyone." Caleb's expression softened, and he cupped her face gently. "Then I will do my best to deserve that trust." He kissed her again, deeper this time, and Emma felt heat bloom in her chest. His hands were gentle as he helped her out of her dress, and she returned the favor, unbuttoning his shirt with trembling fingers. What followed was tender and careful, Caleb constantly checking that Emma was comfortable, that she wanted to continue. He was a considerate lover, attentive to her responses, and when it was over, Emma lay curled against his chest, feeling cherished and safe in a way she had never experienced before. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness, the words coming easier than she expected. Caleb's arms tightened around her. "I love you too, Emma. You and Daniel both. You are my family now, and I will spend the rest of my life making sure you know it." Winter settled over Nevada in earnest, bringing cold winds and occasional snow. The ranch work slowed during these months, which meant Caleb could spend more time inside with Emma and Daniel. They developed routines that felt sacred in their simplicity. Breakfast together as the sun rose, morning chores, afternoons spent on various projects, evenings by the fire. Daniel continued to grow and change, his vocabulary expanding slowly but steadily. He began to ask for things using single words: water, bread, star, outside. Each new word was celebrated, and Caleb was as invested in Daniel's progress as Emma was. One snowy afternoon, Caleb sat at the table with Daniel, trying something new. He had carved simple shapes from wood: a horse, a cow, a house, a person, and he placed them in front of Daniel. "Can you show me which one is the horse?" he asked. Daniel studied the shapes, then picked up the horse without hesitation. "Good, now can you show me the house?" Again, Daniel selected correctly. They went through all the shapes and Daniel identified each one. Caleb looked at Emma with excitement. He understands everything. His mind just works differently in how he expresses it. Emma felt a surge of love for this man who had taken her son's differences not as deficits, but as invitations to understand. "You are wonderful with him. You know that, do not you?" "I am just doing what anyone should do," Caleb said, but Emma shook her head. "No, not anyone. Most people would not have the patience or the insight. You see Daniel for who he is, not who others think he should be. That is a rare and precious gift." Christmas came, and Emma made the house festive with pine boughs and candles. She had knitted scarves for both Caleb and Daniel, and Caleb had carved a beautiful set of horses for Daniel, each one smooth and perfect for small hands to hold. For Emma, he had purchased fabric from the general store, a beautiful deep green that would make a lovely dress, and a book of poetry he thought she might enjoy. They exchanged gifts on Christmas morning, and Daniel clutched his wooden horses with something like joy on his face. He lined them up in careful rows, arranging and rearranging them in patterns only he understood, and Emma and Caleb sat close together on the settee, watching their son play. "This is the best Christmas I have ever had," Emma said softly. "Mine too," Caleb agreed, kissing her temple. As winter deepened into January and February, Emma discovered she was with child. The realization came with a mix of joy and anxiety. She wanted to give Caleb a child of his own blood, but she worried about how it might change things with Daniel, whether a new baby would require so much attention that her first son would feel neglected. She told Caleb one evening after Daniel was in bed, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. "I am pregnant. The baby should come in late summer, I think." Caleb's face broke into a huge smile and he pulled Emma into his arms. "That is wonderful news. We are going to have a baby." Then, sensing her tension, he pulled back to look at her face. "Why do you seem worried?" "Are you not happy about it?" "I am happy," Emma assured him, "but I am also concerned. A new baby will need so much care and Daniel still needs so much attention. I do not want him to feel pushed aside or less important." Caleb took her hands. "Emma, Daniel is our son. Any children we have together will be his siblings, and we will make sure all of them know they are loved and valued. Yes, a baby requires a lot of care, but Daniel is older and more independent now than when you first arrived. We will figure it out, just like we figure out everything else. Together." There was that word again, the promise that had sustained them from the beginning. Together. Emma allowed herself to relax into the excitement, and over the following weeks, she and Caleb began preparing for the baby's arrival. They decided the baby would stay in their room at first, and later they could build an addition to the house if needed. Emma began sewing tiny clothes, and Caleb started carving a cradle from smooth pine. Daniel seemed to sense the change in his mother's body, though he did not have words for it. He would sometimes place his hand on her belly when it began to swell, his expression thoughtful. Emma talked to him about the baby, explaining that he would be a big brother and that the baby would need his help and love. Spring arrived with its promise of renewal, the desert blooming briefly with wildflowers that painted the landscape in unexpected colors. Caleb was busy with ranch work again, and Emma was busy with the garden she had planted, coaxing vegetables from the Nevada soil. Daniel spent his days alternating between helping Caleb and sitting in the shade, drawing pictures or arranging his wooden horses one warm May afternoon. Emma was hanging laundry when she heard Daniel's voice, more words together than he had ever spoken before. "Mama, come see." Her heart leaped and she hurried to where Daniel stood near the corral. He pointed at Star, and Emma saw that the mare was lying down, clearly in labor. "Star having baby," Daniel said, his words stilted but clear. "Oh my goodness, you are right. We need to get Caleb." But Caleb had already seen and was in the corral, speaking softly to Star and checking on her progress. Emma and Daniel watched from the fence as, over the course of an hour, Star delivered a perfect foal, a filly with legs that seemed impossibly long and a coat the color of honey. Daniel's eyes were wide with wonder and he kept saying, baby horse," his excitement palpable. When the foal had been cleaned and was attempting her first wobbly steps, Caleb came to the fence, grinning. "She is beautiful, is not she? She is perfect," Emma agreed. "What will you name her?" Caleb looked at Daniel. "What do you think, Daniel? She is Star's baby." "What should we call her?" Daniel thought for a long moment, then said, "Hope." Both Emma and Caleb went silent, the significance of the word not lost on them. Hope. That was what they had built here, what they had given each other. "Hope it is," Caleb said, his voice thick with emotion. "That is a perfect name." As Emma's pregnancy progressed through the hot summer months, the ranch thrived. The cattle were healthy, the garden produced abundantly, and the family that lived there grew stronger with each passing day. Daniel was speaking more now, short sentences that got his meaning across, and his attachment to both Caleb and Emma was clear. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Daniel leaned against Caleb and said, "Papa." Caleb froze, his eyes going wide. "What did you say, son?" "Papa," Daniel repeated, more confidently. Emma saw tears well in Caleb's eyes and he wrapped his arm around Daniel's shoulders. "Yes, I am your papa, and you are my boy, always." It was a moment of perfect understanding, of bonds forged not by blood but by love and commitment and showing up day after day to do the hard work of being a family. In August, when the heat shimmered off the desert floor and the mountains wavered in the distance, Emma went into labor. Mrs. Pritchard and the doctor from Belmont attended her, and after a long night and difficult morning, Emma delivered a healthy baby boy with a lusty cry and dark hair like his father. Caleb held his son with shaking hands, wonder written all over his face. "He is perfect," he breathed. "Absolutely perfect. What should we name him?" Emma asked, exhausted but happy. Caleb thought for a moment. "What about Samuel Henderson? It was my grandfather's name." "Samuel is beautiful," Emma agreed. When Daniel was brought in to meet his baby brother, he approached cautiously, his expression serious. He looked at the tiny, red-faced infant for a long moment, then gently touched Samuel's hand. "Baby," he said. "My baby." "Yes, he is your baby brother," Emma confirmed. "You are going to be such a good big brother to him." And Daniel was. As Samuel grew from newborn to infant, Daniel was fascinated by him. He would sit near the cradle and watch Samuel sleep, would fetch things when Emma asked, would even sing his tuneless humming songs to soothe the baby when he cried. Caleb made sure Daniel never felt neglected, still spending time with him and the horses, still praising his drawings and his growing vocabulary. The family settled into new rhythms, the chaos of a baby blending with the established patterns they had created. Emma was tired, as all new mothers are, but she was happier than she had ever imagined possible. She had a husband who loved her genuinely, not just dutifully. She had a son who was thriving beyond what doctors had said was possible. And now she had a new baby, a symbol of everything good that had grown from the risk she took in answering Caleb's advertisement. As autumn arrived again, marking more than a year since Emma and Daniel had first come to Nevada, the family gathered for a photograph in Belmont. The traveling photographer who came through town set up his equipment, and the Henderson family posed. Caleb standing tall and proud, Emma seated with baby Samuel in her arms, and Daniel standing beside Caleb, his hand on Caleb's shoulder and a small smile on his face. The photograph would be precious to Emma for the rest of her life, tangible proof of the family they had built, the love they had nurtured, the impossible made possible through patience and determination. Years passed, each one bringing its own joys and challenges. Samuel grew into a lively toddler, then a rambunctious little boy with his father's easy smile and his mother's thoughtful eyes. Daniel grew too, taller and more capable, his speech improving until he could hold simple conversations, though he would always prefer fewer words to many. His bond with the horses remained strong, and as he entered his teenage years, he became invaluable help on the ranch, his unique way of understanding animals making him a natural hand. Caleb and Emma's love deepened with time, the way good love does, becoming less about passion and more about partnership, about facing life's difficulties side by side and celebrating its victories together. They added to their family over the years a daughter named Grace when Samuel was 3, and another son, Thomas, when Grace was 2. Each child was welcomed with joy, and each grew up in a home where differences were celebrated, where patience was practiced, and where love was the foundation of everything. Daniel thrived in ways that Emma had never dared dream during those dark days in Philadelphia when Robert had wanted to send him away. He would never be like other people, would always need certain accommodations and understanding, but he was happy. He was loved. He had a place in the world that was secure and valued. He had a father in Caleb who had never once treated him as anything less than a true son, and siblings who adored their unique older brother. The ranch prospered too. Caleb's hard work and honest reputation brought success, and the Henderson Ranch became known for its quality horses and cattle. They hired additional help as needed, and Caleb taught Daniel everything about ranching, adapting his teaching methods to Daniel's learning style. One evening when Daniel was 17, Emma found Caleb on the porch, looking out at the sunset as he often did. She sat beside him, comfortable in the silence, and after a while she said, "Do you remember what you said to me that first day at the train station? When I told you the truth about Daniel, I said we would learn together," Caleb recalled with a soft smile. "We did not we? We learned how to be a family, how to love without conditions, how to build a life worth living." Caleb took her hand. "Best learning I ever did. I cannot imagine my life without you and the children, any of you." "Daniel told me something today," Emma said. "He was working with one of the young horses and I complimented his patience. He said, 'Papa taught me. Papa is patient with me, so I am patient with horses.' He understands, Caleb. He understands what you have given him." Caleb's eyes grew bright. "He has given me just as much. He taught me to slow down, to see the world differently, to value people for who they are rather than what they can do. He made me a better man. They sat together as the sky turned from gold to purple to deep blue, and Emma reflected on the journey that had brought them here. A mail-order bride with a child nobody wanted, meeting a cowboy who saw possibilities instead of problems. It could have ended so differently. It probably should have, by conventional wisdom. But wisdom is not always found in convention. As the years continued to pass, the Henderson children grew and created their own paths. Samuel became a veterinarian, his childhood on the ranch giving him a love for animals that turned into a career. Grace married a teacher and moved to Carson City, but visited often with her growing family. Thomas took over more of the ranch work as Caleb aged, preparing to inherit the land his father had built into something substantial. And Daniel, sweet Daniel who had been written off by so many, found his own way. He never left the ranch, having no desire to, but he became the finest horse trainer in 3 counties. People brought their difficult horses to Daniel Henderson, knowing his patient understanding and unique perspective could reach animals others had given up on. He never married, seeming content with his horses and his family, but he was a beloved uncle to his siblings' children and a valued member of the community. On a warm evening in late spring, when Emma and Caleb were in their 60s and surrounded by children and grandchildren visiting for Sunday dinner, Emma looked around her table and felt overwhelming gratitude. They had built this loud, chaotic, beautiful family from nothing but hope and hard work and love. After dinner, as the younger grandchildren played in the yard and the adults talked on the porch, Daniel came and sat beside his mother. His hair was streaked with gray now, and his face bore the lines of a life well lived, but his eyes were still the same, still seeing the world in his unique way. "Mama," he said, because even after all these years his speech remained simple and direct. "Happy? Are you happy, sweetheart?" Emma asked, though she thought she knew the answer. "Yes, always happy here. Home." He paused, thinking, then added, "You and Papa gave me home, gave me life, love." Emma's eyes filled with tears and she took her son's hand. "You gave us life too, Daniel, you and Papa and all of this. It was all worth it. Every difficult moment, every challenge, every fear. It was all worth it to get here." Caleb joined them, moving a bit slower now with age but still strong, still steady. He put his hand on Daniel's shoulder, the gesture as natural as breathing after all these years. "What are my 2 favorite people talking about?" "Being grateful," Emma said simply. "Plenty to be grateful for," Caleb agreed. And the 3 of them sat together as the sun set over the Nevada landscape they all loved, as the sounds of family filled the evening air, as the life they had built together proved itself again and again to be exactly what they had all needed. In the end, theirs was a story of courage, Emma's courage in reaching out for help when she had no other options, Caleb's courage in opening his home and heart to strangers, Daniel's courage in simply being himself in a world that did not always understand. It was a story of love that grew from seeds of hope planted in desert soil, nurtured with patience, and blooming more beautifully than anyone could have predicted. The ranch would continue for generations, passing from the Hendersons to their children and grandchildren, each one carrying forward the values that Caleb and Emma had established: acceptance, patience, hard work, and above all, love. The story of how it all began with a mail-order bride, a child with special needs, and a cowboy who said, "We will learn together," would be told and retold. A family legend that reminded each new generation that the most important things in life are not things at all, but the people we choose to stand beside and the love we choose to give. Many years later, When Emma and Caleb were both gone, having lived long and full lives, their children gathered at the ranch to sort through their parents' belongings. They found letters Emma and Caleb had written to each other over the years, even though they lived in the same house, little notes of love and appreciation tucked into drawers and books. They found Daniel's drawings, hundreds of them, documenting his life and perspective in ways words never could. They found the blue glass bottle that had been Daniel's first treasure in Nevada, carefully preserved on a shelf in his room. And they found a journal Emma had kept, documenting her first year at the ranch, the fears and hopes and gradually growing love that had transformed her life. On the last page of that journal, Emma had written, "I came to Nevada expecting nothing more than survival, a roof over our heads and food in our stomachs. What I found instead was a partner, a home, and a life beyond my wildest dreams." Caleb saw my son not as broken but as different, not as a burden but as a blessing. In teaching me to see Daniel through his eyes, he taught me to see myself differently too, not as desperate and damaged, but as strong and worthy of love. We learned together, just as he promised. We learned how to be a family, how to love without conditions, how to build something lasting from the most unpromising beginning. If I could go back to that frightened woman on the train, clutching her son's hand and praying for mercy, I would tell her this: hope is not foolish. Love is not impossible. And sometimes the best things in life come from the greatest risks. Our story is proof of that. The Henderson children decided that journal would stay in the family, passed down through generations. A reminder that love can bloom in the most unexpected places, and that family is not just about blood, it is about showing up, day after day, and choosing to learn together. The ranch house still stands, updated and expanded over the decades, but fundamentally the same structure where Emma, Caleb, and Daniel built their life. The barn where Daniel spoke his first word is still there, now housing a new generation of horses. The mountains that Daniel loved to draw still rise in the distance, purple in the dawn light, eternal and unchanging. And in the small cemetery on the edge of the property, beneath a spreading cottonwood tree, 3 headstones stand side by side. Caleb Henderson, beloved husband and father; Emma Henderson, beloved wife and mother; and Daniel Henderson, beloved son and brother, with an epitaph that reads simply, "He saw the world differently and taught us all to see more clearly." Their story, which began with a mail-order bride, a child with special needs, and a cowboy who promised they would learn together, became a testament to the power of acceptance, the strength of patience, and the transformative nature of unconditional love. It proved that families come in all forms, that worth is not measured by conventional standards, and that sometimes the greatest blessings come wrapped in the most unexpected packages. The Henderson legacy lived on not just in the land and the livestock, but in the values they had modeled, that every person has inherent worth, that differences should be celebrated rather than feared, that love is a choice we make every day, and that the best things in life require patience, courage, and the willingness to learn together. And somewhere in the Nevada wind that whispers through the sage, in the sunset light that paints the mountains gold, in the steady rhythm of ranch life that continues season after season, the spirit of what Emma, Caleb, and Daniel built together endures, a reminder that love, real love, the kind that changes lives and spans generations, begins with a simple promise: we will learn together.